Hello, Garland here, and we're going to talk about some interesting stuff today. I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit and just have some fun philosophically talking about the culture of the elites, the elite ruling class. You know, every country, every time has an elite ruling class, and I think what we're witnessing here is the culture of the Western elites crashing to earth, crashing into reality. So let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and I want to thank all my friends for hanging out with me. So we're going to talk about the elite ruling class and what the heck am I talking about? So, you know, in every culture and every time, there are people who have the power, the economic, the political power to control the situation, to kind of run things, right? And we refer to them as the oligarchs. If it's another country, they're the oligarchs. And in America, we try to pretend as though we're some kind of ideal, pristine democracy, and that we actually have um, we've created a situation where the people at the bottom actually have a lot of say in how things work, and so that it works well. And we're given the illusion that the working class, the working poor, and God forbid, even the poor have some say in how things are going. And so there's some things going on here in the last several years that have demonstrated clearly that that we don't, and also have demonstrated that the people who are in power are screwing up bad, and their culture is just falling apart. So let's talk about that a little bit, and let me give you some examples. So in America, a big part of the game, right, is you always have to provide the illusion. You know, there's an illusion. There's the American dream. The American illusion that if you work hard and you do everything right, you can rise to the top, right? But underneath that illusion is the grand illusion. The grand illusion to me is this. What that means is that the system is fair, right? That you're operating in a fair system, in a reasonable system, in a system that is not and it's a level playing field for everybody, no matter who you are. And if you work hard, you can move up to the top because the playing field is level. Well, the truth of the matter in America is the playing field has never been level. Constitution was written. You had to be a white male landowner to vote, which means it wasn't there wasn't a level playing field. And over the course of time, we went through different periods where different groups of people couldn't vote, and then they got the vote, and then they suffered all kinds of things. And now we deal with all kinds of stuff like laws that are passed to make it harder for people to vote, all kinds of craziness going on, right? But above that is an economic what will I call it? Operating system, right? So let me give you an example of what I mean. Rather than try to explain what it does, is let me give you an indicator that this thing. Oh, Hope Garland has Robert Barnes on sometime. I like Robert's a very interesting guy. He's more conservative than me, so there are things I don't agree with him on. However, there are a lot of things that I think he's brilliant on, and I think that's very nice. I like Robert. I enjoy watching him on Alexander Mercouris, The Duran. Okay, let me give you an example, a couple of examples. In that to demonstrate that the playing field has been leaning dramatically in the direction of the wealthy. Think about the stock market for a moment. What we have always been told is the stock market tells us how the economy is doing. Why? There was a time when if Campbell's soup, they sold more soup, they were able to cut cost, often labor, but cut costs. They were able to buy their products cheaper. They were able to get more efficient machinery, things of that nature, right? They were able to cut costs and they could maximize profit, and they were doing better. Their profit went up, their numbers went up. You go to the stock market and people would look at, how Campbell Soup is doing. and they'd buy stock based on that. And their stock would go up if Campbell Soup was doing well. And if Campbell Soup had some issues, it may go down. It could be on any number of things. The price of chicken or vegetables for their soup could go up. Anything could happen. The price of energy could go up. Different things like that. But at the stock market going up or going down was based on something that happened in the real world, right? It was something that happened in the world of bricks and mortar, in the world of selling and buying and paying. That's what determined the stock market. Now, what happened? Now, don't get me wrong. There was all kinds of elite ruling class chicanery going on where they were, closing other people's businesses down and creating monopolies and things like that. But still, that was happening in the real world. Let's think about COVID. When COVID happened, initially the stock market sold. Oh, it dropped, the bottom dropped out, and it dropped out based on some people's belief that it still operated based on what was happening in the real world. So there was a thought that if people stop buying things, if people stay in the house, if people stop, traveling, doing all the things that they normally do, these companies will lose customers. They won't have anybody to sell their goods and services. And in the real world, they won't bring the same kind of profit. Therefore, the market sold based on that speculation. But what happened? It immediately went right back up. Congress passed the CARES Act, and 3 to 5, anywhere up to 7 trillion or more but the government, boom, threw it into the market, gave most of it right away to the billionaires. Things leveled right out, right? So what does that mean? That means that the market wasn't related to what happened in the real world. We were literally shut down, so people couldn't travel. They couldn't buy things. There was a particular, you'll remember this, there was a particular company named GameStop, and it's in malls, something to do with games. Who the hell even knows, right? It was a dead man walking. Nobody was going to buy, whatever they're selling. So what happened? Some people on Reddit figured out how to manipulate the numbers and make it go up. And they, manipulated the numbers, and all of these people bought it, and it went up, and people sold, and all kinds of things happened, right? That had nothing to do with the fact that GameStop was a company that operated in malls, and all the malls were closed, and no one knew when and if they would ever open up again. So at that point, it was obvious. What was going on in the market was not related to what was going on in the real world. And who owns 86% of the market? The oligarchs, the billionaires, the wealthy people, the top 10%, right? So what we learned at that point was that the economic world that the elite ruling class lives in isn't the same economic world that we live in. We have to live in a world where you got to make something or buy something or ply a trade or know how to do something, right? They just put their money in whatever. Doesn't matter if the company does good or not. Campbell Soup, in theory, could stop selling soup. They don't have to make anything. They don't have to have any factories. They can just be a name, Campbell Soup, in the market. And people will buy and sell Campbell Soup. Why? Because it's like Bitcoin. The only people don't buy Campbell Soup stock because they think Campbell Soup is going to sell more soups and the value of the stock is going to go up. They buy Campbell Soup stock because they think somebody else will buy it for more. If I buy it at $1 a share, somebody else will come along and buy it at $1.25 a share. And that person doesn't care whether they're selling more or less soup. So the bottom line is their economic system was totally detached from ours, which means it also kind of implies that their world is detached from ours. Their political reality is detached from ours. Their economic reality is different than ours, and detached from ours, and their political reality is detached from ours. So let's continue on. And again, what else is happening as far as the banks, right? I don't want to get too far into this, but what are the banks doing? They're doing asset-backed securities. They're doing derivatives, where they're doing, they're like, I'll get $1 billion worth of loans, and then I'll slice that into percentages, and I'll sell the percentages of that loan for something else, as though the parts of the loan are worth more than the loan. And by the time I get finished, I've sold $1 billion worth of loans over and over and over again for $50 billion. And there's nothing really there. It's magic. It's complex financial tools that even the people that are selling them, derivatives, asset-backed securities, even the people that are selling them don't even really understand what they are, because they're really nothing. It's really magic. Again, they figured out a way to come up with these complex financial tools that they don't understand, that we don't understand, that are not in any way attached to a physical reality, and get rich off of them and make lots and lots of money. And that's how the money is being made in our society, which means that's why we don't get any of it, because it's not really being made by selling soup or footballs or things like that, or clothes or hats, or people get providing services and goods. No, 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 no. So what happens? So now the ruling elite class are living in an unreal world, right? And all kinds of things start happening. Our news turns into that, where we talk about things that aren't real, where all you have to do is say something and pretend as though it's real. And we can't have a discussion about whether real things make sense to us or not. An example, and I'm not going into this direction, but you've probably heard of the swimmer Leah Thompson, something like this, right? So this is a transgendered person who was ranked like 532nd as a male swimmer, who get transgendered and operated. I'm not blaming Leah for anything. Leah operated within the rules. The rules for the NCAA said something like, if you've been taking the hormones for 2 years or something, then you're considered transgender, right? Okay, so that happens. And there are people who said, well, I think there's some issues that need to be discussed here, because there's differences. A man, a biological male, has a center of gravity in the shoulders rather than in the hip area, and that's a distinct advantage. And that doesn't change with transgendered, when the person becomes a transgendered woman. And so that's a valid discussion. I think everybody should be treated fairly. I think everybody should be treated the same. I'm one of those people. I don't believe in a hierarchical society. I believe in a society where everybody has the same expectation of rights. That being said, it's a valid discussion too. That does this particular transgendered person have a distinct physical advantage over the women who were born a biological woman? That's a real discussion. That doesn't mean you dislike Leah Thomas or whatever, you've got anything, or you have anything against transgendered people. That means that you're willing to have a legitimate conversation about something in the physical world. It's in the physical world, right? And we live in a society where now, no, you can't have that discussion. If you have that discussion, you're attacked and called names. You're a bad person for saying, I think that. You can't even say, I think that's a valid discussion. So we're not living in a world where logical discussion and reasonable argumentation is acceptable anymore. There's just an assertion. You, sir, are a fill in the blank, a Russian bot, a transphobe, homophobe, whatever, and we can't even have a discussion about it, or you're attacked and torn to bits. So you see that our society becomes more and more divorced from a discussion and an understanding of things based on how they happen in the real world, and the ability to have a logical and reasonable conversation about, do our beliefs and expectations align with what's going on in the real world? All right, let me move forward. Let me move forward to what's happening in let's move forward to what's happening in Ukraine. So what happens? The Ukraine crisis comes up. Again, what happens? There are people like me who say, interesting, I think this deserves a reasonable and logical discussion, a discussion in which we say, let's see how this happened. Let's figure it out. Let's figure out what could have happened to prevent it, so that if we run into this the next time, if we run into something, what's most important is what could be done to stop it. Not who. The only thing we get is, who's the bad guy. We don't get, is there anything that could be done to stop it right now? What could be done to stop it? What could have been done to prevent it? Excuse me. Right? Because the first thing that should happen is, there's a military crisis. People are being injured. People are being killed. There's going to be a disruption in the food chain for people around the world. Poor countries will be hurt first. How can we alleviate? Here's the question from Garland Nixon. Excuse me. How can we alleviate the suffering of the most vulnerable and the masses of people in the world? That should be the first question, which would mean, how can we resolve this crisis in a diplomatic way to end it as quick as possible? No, sorry. If you have that discussion, you're an evil Russian Putin loving bot. Everything becomes a discussion of who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who are you aligned with, the good guys or the bad guys. And there is a narrative. The narrative is Putin's a bad guy, Zelensky's a great hero, and the Russians are losing the war, and you have to wear a blue and yellow ribbon to show your support, those kinds of things, right? Again, if you notice what I keep getting back to, and that is a society where it is shunned to have reasonable discussions, logical, reasonable discussions based on the facts, based on honest resolution of our problems. Well, let's go a little bit further with this. What happens? It is the responsibility. Let's get to our elite ruling class. What is the responsibility of our ruling class? Number one, in the United States, in the EU, we're told that there's a quote democracy, which that implies the people at the bottom have some say, which implies the second thing. If the people at the bottom has some say in choosing their leaders, that means that their leaders are expected to act in the best interest of those who put them in office, doesn't it? I mean, that's the implication of democracy. If we, the working class, the working poor, the poor, all of us, if we have some say in choosing our rulers, then that means our rulers have no choice but to take our needs into account when they're making decisions. So the obvious question is, are they doing that now? What's going on? The Biden administration, along with the leaders of the EU, are now acting on an ideological belief that not only does it not take our needs into account, it's antithetical to the needs of the common man and woman. So what they're saying is we have to do something to hurt Putin. Think about this. We've got to do something to make the people of Russia suffer. This is, and think about this. This is some kind of a vendetta. This is some kind of a punishment, some kind of a grand punishment. What are you going to do? We're going to punish the people of Russia, first of all, because they're Russian. All Russians must be punished, including the quote oligarchs. They've got to be punished. Why? Because apparently just because of their ethnicity. And we're not supposed to question that and say, well, even if you're a billionaire and you're Russian, before we take your property, right? Because supposedly we're in a society where there is some respect for private property. So before we arbitrarily, the government arbitrarily grabs somebody's property and takes it from them, they should have due process. The government should have to be able to present some kind of something that they've done wrong, some way that it was illegally acquired, something, a reason for taking the property. But the reason is they're Russian. And how do we know? They ain't taking Jeff Bezos. They're not taking Greek billionaires. None of that. Russian, quote, oligarchs who don't even have as much money as the U.S. oligarchs. And right, they got a couple $1 billion here. They got 100 billion. So we can't have a question. We can't have a discussion about that. So our elite ruling class, again, they're making decisions. They're taking actions that are in no way beneficial to us. Look, I'm not, oh, yay, there's billionaires. But here's the bottom line. If we live in a society where someone says, you know what, I can take that guy's, someone who is in the same ethnic group as you, Russian, has done something that I'm unhappy with. Therefore, I can utilize a collective punishment regime. And I can say someone who's Russian has done something that I find to be, irresponsible and wrong. And you're Russian. That's good enough. Where does that stop? It's my ethnic group. Is it my party? What if I belong to the wrong party? You're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a Libertarian, you're a People's Party, you're the American Communist Party. You have a right in America, if you want to be a member of the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, any party you want. We have a constitution that says you can. So you say, now what happens? Well, you're a member of the Socialist and Liberation Party. We're taking your stuff. You're a member of the Libertarian Party. We're taking your stuff. Where does it stop? What we've said is we're not going to respect the ownership of property. And we will arbitrarily come up with a reason to take yours. And that's our elite ruling class now. Think about what happened and to me, the key was the beginning, the indicator was in Canada, where there was a truckers thing in Ottawa. Everybody remembers that, over the mandates. They were working class people. And what happened? Whether you agree with them or not, that's irrelevant. The government of Canada put in some like emergency laws, and they said, if you give money to that cause, we can freeze your bank account. One woman gave them $25. They froze her bank account. And they said, why? She said, why? They said, well, it's basically because it's illegal. And she said, but it wasn't illegal when I gave him the $25. I gave him the $25 before you passed those emergency laws. Didn't matter. But again, that was the indicator. That should have let us know your money's not safe in their banks. Your rights, you got no rights anymore. Our elite ruling class says you have no rights. You have some privileges, nothing more. Don't fool yourself into thinking you have rights. You have privileges that can be revoked on any given Tuesday. Any given Tuesday, they can wake up and say, you can't do this anymore. And that's it. So the idea that you have rights in America, forget that. EU, not happening. Canada, gone. So those are the things that were the indicators. We could see it coming in. A lot of us looked at it and said, man, that's scary stuff. You're starting to seize people's bank accounts. We are not happy with that. And then this happened, and boom, it was a natural progression. Hey, somebody Russian did something. Can I find any Russians? Hey, there's a Russian standing over here. Good, let's punish them. Because they're Russian? Shouldn't they have had to violate some kind of a law or done something wrong, perhaps? Shouldn't we even talk about how these Russian oligarchs became oligarchs? I kind of know. I'll give you the quick version of how a lot of them became oligarchs in the 1990s when the Soviet Union ended and it was switching to a market economy, selling off a lot of goods. And the leader of the Soviet Union came to the U.S. and said, hey, could somebody help me? They said, no problem. They sent over Larry Summers and Jeffrey Sachs. Look up, there's a if you don't believe me, there's an article, you look it up. The Harvard boys go to Russia, or go to Moscow. I think it's Russia. The Harvard boys go to Russia. Look it up. They went over there, and Russia thought that the Larry Summers and those guys were going to go over and help them change from a state-owned economy to a market economy. That ain't what Larry and Summers and those guys did, because that ain't who they are. Russia got an understanding of neoliberalism at that point. What did they do? They brought these people from London, and they came over, and what they did was they looted Russia. They went in there, and their intent was not to turn Russia into a market economy. Their intent was to buy Russian industries for pennies on the dollar. So they went in and looted Russia until Vladimir Putin, and this is why they hate Vladimir Putin so bad. This is a fact. This is why they hate it. They looted Russia until Putin came to power and kicked them out. That's why they hate. That's the real reason that they hate him. And a bunch of the oligarchs in London, he even jailed some of them. They were looting Russia. Putin, you can like them or not like them. This is factual. So a bunch of the oligarchs, he jailed some of them for a few years. A bunch of them just ran and left because they were looting the country. They took their money and they went to London. They put it all in these London banks. And that's why all of the Russian oligarchs were living in London, because they were helping the moneyed interests in London to loot Russia during the 1990s. Putin came to power, and some of them went to jail for doing that. The others just ran, and when the others the ones that got out of jail, they ran, and they were anti-Putin, and they were trying to help the West to overthrow him ever since. All right. And it's funny because, and some of them were organized crime leaders and stuff like that. It's interesting. But what's funny about it is, this goes down, and their buddies, their so-called friends in London, start seizing their goods. And a bunch of them ran and went back to Russia and took their money back to Russia as best they could get it. But the bottom line was, that all being said, they got it wrong and everything. I still don't think that the government, if the government's going to go after them and say you got this money wrongly, illegally, okay, prove it, but they can't do that because they were all working together. But they're just robbing them now. They're just saying, we're going to take your money. I tell you what, look this up. Look whatever happened. Look, Libya missing sovereign wealth fund. You'll find articles from 2011. When they overthrew the government of Libya had $2.9 billion in a sovereign wealth fund in London Bank, right? Libya, the country of Libya. When they overthrew the government of Libya, it went, quote, missing. Go look it up right now. You don't believe me? Search it. Libya sovereign wealth fund missing. Search those terms and see what you have. So the bottom line is, our ruling elite, they just rob you. They're just thieves and robbers. And now, so what's happening now? Why do I say their culture is crashing? Right now, what's going on? I think part of it is, you've heard of this great reset, that they want to do some of that. They understand that this whole magical banking system they have of derivatives and asset-backed securities, the United States is $30 trillion in debt. Within the next 10 years, our entire budget for the United States won't even service the debt. The debt is unpayable. They know that they have created this thing that is washing ashore, that it's all a fraud, it's all a fake, and now it's starting to wash ashore. So what do they want to do? They want to do a big reset. That's the term, the Great Reset. It's their term. So what do they want to do? Figure a way to wipe away all their debt and start over again. And one of the ways you got to do that is create a lot of poverty and despair, right? And I'm going to give you a thought. I'm going to give you a possibility. I'm not saying this is true. This is just suspicion, okay, of what they do. The United States' big heyday was when? Right after World War II. Why? Every place else was rubble. Every place else was rubble other than us, right? So one way would be a World War III and everything turns to rubble. However, there's a problem. They don't want to lose it all. And they now know, if we do that kind of World War III, it's likely to go nuclear. We die, we lose, and even worse, we lose our investments. So they may be a lot of things, but they're still greedy and they want to be alive. So I suspect they don't want a World War III. Why does Biden keep saying every so often, what would Joe Biden say? No, 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 no. We're not going to do World War III. He was talking to the investor class. Jens Stoltenberg, for all the anti-Russia stuff, what did he say? We're not, go look it up. He said, we're not sending after they met in Poland, Stoltenberg, head of NATO, comes out and says, look, we're not going to send troops into Ukraine because we don't want war with Russia. That would mean war with Russia. He was very specific. That would mean war with Russia. We don't want war with Russia. He's talking to the powerful global ruling elite. World Economic Fund people, Klaus Schwab's and Bezos of the people. Look, they're not stupid. They don't want to lose their investment and all die. But let's take this in another direction. What if they want the results? They want like the effect of a hydrogen bomb. Remember that they used to talk about a hydrogen bomb. It'll kill all the people, but it won't destroy all of the, the infrastructure. What if you could do that a little different? Because you want those people. These human beings are like firewood. You can burn them to keep your, you need them to buy things. You need them to run around like little mouse and do work, and you need to extract money from them. You need them. They're of some value, right? Not much, but some value. Firewood, who cares about it? But it has some value. You can burn it and it keeps you warm. That's kind of how they view us. So what if they say, we can't do this World War III thing because that could blow up in our faces, both literally and figuratively, and we won't be able to recover from it because everything's gone, and we like the Maldives and things like that. And our, deviant sexual activities, God only knows what's going on with that, the a la Epstein. We like to do things. And so World War III is not a good option. Now I'm telling you, I think this is what I think. That's why Biden keeps saying, no, we ain't sending troops in. We don't want to go to World War III. Stoltenberg, we don't want World War III. Okay. So you do it differently. You do these sanctions Over the top sanctions. Come on. Let's be honest. Do you really think these people are stupid? If you and me, no, we're not economists. We look at this and we say, wait a minute, you're sanctioning yourself. You're doing sanctions in a way that's going to wipe out our economies. I mean, they're just destroying Europe. Europe's toast. They want to shut Europe off from Russian gas and oil, run the prices through the roof for that. They want inflation. They want it. What are they trying to do? They're trying to wipe out our economy. Well, Control Alt Delete, right? You wipe out the economy. After you've wiped out the economy, the Great Reset, Control Alt Delete, and now boop boop boop. You got a little blue screen. You put some DOS commands in, and guess what? You got this new thing. And all of that debt you had, that's all wiped out. Well, that ain't going to work. That's forgiven. You're never going to pay it anyway. And you get back it. Look, the guy Fink, who was in charge of BlackRock, they got $9 trillion. They managed $9 trillion in assets. Said, well, it looks like globalism is done. Why? They're not stupid. They're looking at it saying this ain't working. And part of it is this. Why ain't it working? Because Russia and China won't work with them. Russia and China are like this. Look, we're independent. We're willing to play on the grand stage, but we're going to be independent, and we're going to do things our way, and we're going to keep our own cultures. We're not going to do the woke stuff. We're not going to do that. We're going to do things our way. And they're like, okay, a couple of things. We got to try to wipe them out, and we'll wipe all of our basic working class out. Because what happens? Let's just say, think about this. I wipe it out. You lose all your investments, your retirements, your pensions, everything's lost, right? And then I say to you, well, and you're like, well, I'm starving. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I ride in on a white horse. My name is Klaus Schwab or whatever, right? And I say, here's what we're going to do. Gotcha. Listen to this. I'm going to make everybody a bank account. And in that bank account, I'm going to put $1,000 a month. Well, at the time, you're hungry and barely making it. It's a digital cash, which means they control all of it, right? And guess what? You're not even going to have to pay any taxes. And this under this new system, you're like, oh, I'm not going to pay any taxes. No, no, no. We're going to give you money. Now they're going to give you just enough for you to be barely scraping along. And now they got their new economy. They've got the Great Reset. Their debts are gone. You have just enough that you can make it kind of a little bit. And times were so hard, you're happy that now you're back up to a little bit, that you're not so far below board that you're, looking for a grain of rice for the family, cutting it in 8 different pieces to make soup. And now they ride in on the white horse and they get their Great Reset because they know this is not working. But one of the things issues they have was Russia. Russia's this big country, doesn't want to cooperate, got all of these resources. They need to break Russia too. That's part of the Great Reset. But now the problem is, so that's why I say their culture is collapsing, because their plan is exceptionally flawed. Exceptionally flawed. There's things they didn't take into account. And one of them is going to be the level of pushback they're going to get from the people. They didn't take that into account during COVID. There was the plan there. Everybody get your shot. Everybody get your QR code. Everybody do what you're told. And there were people that would do neither. And people fought back and all that. They didn't expect that level of pushback from people. And there were a lot of people just says, no, I don't want the QR code. I'm not going to do what I'm told. Everybody was supposed to do what they were told. People didn't do what they told. That threw a monkey wrench in the problem. In it. Some people, some didn't. But it didn't go over as smoothly as they would have liked. And they couldn't pull the Great Reset off right there. And I know this sounds like conspiracy theory, but it is. This is a theory that I have. I'm not saying it's true. I think the problem is when people come up with a theory and they say, I guarantee it's true. All of this could be wrong. Everything I'm taking, this is an intellectual exercise, okay? So don't say Garland told me this is factual. No, this is theory. And I think it's healthy. It's brainstorming. I think it's healthy to do these kinds of things. They don't want us having these kind of the people in power don't want us having these kind of brainstorms, but that's what we're doing. That's all we're doing here on a Sunday evening. So they have now decided they're going to make decisions to take Russia out. Now, here's what I think. They thought, again, that it would be much easier. The plan was, we'll draw Russia into this, because if you have a discussion about the issue in Ukraine, it becomes obvious what happened. It becomes obvious that the European powers, the U.S. um, war machine was moving up to Russia's border with the intent on intimidating Russia, and maybe if they thought they could at one time attacking them. The plan was to eventually dismember Russia, right? And then to keep to divide the spoils. The thing they didn't plan for was Russia was wise to them, and Russia wasn't having it. They're so arrogant. They're like, Russia's going to do what we told. They'll never push back. Russia said, no way. You know what? You backed us into a corner. We're going to punch our way out. So Russia comes out in the corner fighting, and Russia now has a powerful enough military to do that. So so then now their plan is we'll tie Russia down in here. It's a small plan. We'll tie Russia down in this, um, in this, in Ukraine, and then there we go. We'll dispose of them there. They'll fall apart. Well, that's not working because they never thought that Russia would have a plan, and and this is important, I think, that history would catch up with them. History has caught up with the elite ruling class in the West, and here's what I mean. They just knew that India's part of the Quad. India was going to be on their side. And they knew that all of these small countries around the world, they could bully them like they bullied everybody into joining them. And when they said, okay, we're sanctioning Russia, everybody on their side. And the only thing they got was Canada, Australia, maybe Japan, kind of South Korea, and the EU. The only thing they got was the United States and its immediate circle of empire vassals. Rest of the world said no. One of the reasons is, if you look at Africa and South America, think about India, China, these other countries have had hell over the past several centuries from US and European empires and colonial powers that have destroyed them and slaughtered them and killed them and done all kinds of terrible things to them. So the reality is that when there came an opportunity, the countries around the world that had suffered at the hand of colonial powers looked at this, and through their context, I'm not saying right, wrong, good or bad, their context was the US and the colonial powers have come to the edge of Russia, and Russia's fighting back. That's the way they saw it. They saw a country fighting back against the colonial powers, and they just said, well, we're going to go with the country because it's fighting back because the colonial powers have treated us like crap for centuries. And then the ruling elite in the West didn't see that coming. They just thought they'd keep bullying them. And then they did something really dumb. Then they said, I know, we'll go all out on Russia. And I don't think they planned it. They had planned on doing certain things to try to hurt Russia's economy. But then they just lost control and spun out of control. We're going to go after Russia and we're going to sanction everything. We've been waiting so long to sanction for an excuse to sanction Russia. So they sanctioned everything. And what they ended up doing more so than anything else is sanctioning Europe. And as if you listen to me, this is what I've said. The Ukrainians are sacrificial lambs. They get to die, they get to catch bullets, they get blown to hell by the powerful Russian army, and we'll use their deaths as an excuse to sanction Russia and to say Russia bad, we're good. Now, and this is what I'm getting at. So let me make my point here. So in creating a desolate dystopian moonscape wasteland after World War II with military might, I'm going to do it this time with economic might. So now what happens? They're going to use these and say, okay, we started by sacrificing the lives and land of the Ukrainians. Now, that ain't working well enough. Well, what do we got next laying around that we can sacrifice? Oh, Europe, how you doing, buddy? Hey, Europe, how you doing, bud? Europe's like, hey, we're fine. How are you? They're like, yeah, we're doing well. What you doing? Europe's like, hey, we're on board 100% to stop the evil Ruskies. And the US is like, oh, you are you? Well, let me tell you how you could stop them. Here, swallow this poison pill. And you know what? In the same way that the Ukrainians suffered and we're sacrificing them, yeah, well, here, you swallow this poison pill and we'll sacrifice your economy, the futures for your children, everything. How's that sound? And the leaders of Europe are like, sure, that's a great idea. we're going to fix Russia. Here, can I have the poison pill now? And the US is like, yeah, sure, here, there you go. They're like, "Mm." Now Europe is kind of like, oh man, my stomach hurts, dude. What was that you gave me? And the US is like, that was a poison pill, you idiot, but you already took it. So now Ukraine's a sacrificial lamb. Their bodies get to catch bullets on behalf of the the EU, the U.S. empire. And now, guess what? The darn fools in the EU, they get to sacrifice their economy and their future for the same reason. They get wiped out. Who cares? They're gonna. Oh, they're so. Europe is so toast. They are so done. But again, our bankrupt, intellectually bankrupt elites, they thought they were playing chess with, and the other side was just a blank, okay, we're playing chess and we're the white pieces, they're the black pieces, whatever, and they're just pieces. The problem is this: you're in a fight, and the other side's going to throw punches too. So slowly but surely, Russia is starting to throw some punches back. So one of the things that Russia did was they said, look, okay, here's what we're going to do. We got a list of unfriendly nations. That's your coalition. That's the US and your coalition. And if I'm Russia, right, what is my strategy? I'm going to try to break your coalition. I'm going to go after the weak links. I don't have to punch the big guy. I'm going to punch the weakest ones I can. And who's the weakest? Germany at the top of the list. Why? Because they need my gas bad. They can't survive without it. So I'm going to put Germany in a 10-card hole. I'm going to say to Germany, here's what you can do. You can pay me for your gas. I'm not cutting your gas off, but you got to pay me in rubles. And that will screw your sanctions up and prop up my economy. And it will make the ruble an international currency, and it'll hurt the dollar. So A, you can do that, pay for my gas in rubles, which will hurt the dollar, your master, and it'll help prop my economy up, and I'll have more money. Now, your other option is not to do it and not to get gas. And that ain't much of an option, because if you do that, then you have to deal with the internal pain of your people being cold and hungry and out of work. Immediate recession, immediate depression. How can Mercedes and Siemens and Volkswagen and Porsche, can they build things with no energy and no electricity, no heat, no nothing? Can you do that? No, you can't. So our elite ruling class didn't stop to take into account that Russia had some arrows in their quiver, shall we say. Again, the elite ruling class, their culture is crashed. They're idiots. They're not stopping to think that of the results of their actions. They're just doing things. Hey, next we're going to do this, and it'll turn out this way. And when it doesn't, they're like, duh, I don't understand why things aren't turning out the way we want. Because they live in a magic world where you do what you want. They've got so much money. They've got yes men and yes women around them that whatever they say, they believe in. I tell people, if you want to understand these people, there's a book to read, and it's called Voltaire's Bastards by John Ralston Saul. But Voltaire's Bastards is the book. If you want to understand the Bidens and the Jen Stoltenbergs and the Bojos and all of these clowns, read Voltaire's Bastards. Read the whole book. It's a thick book. It's a brilliant book. It's philosophical, yes. It's historical, yes. But it explains the technocrats, because that's what these people are, technocrats. They got all the answers. They create a false world and live in it. As it's been said, neurotics create castles in the sky. Psychotics live in them. They do both. They create a system that they believe works a certain way, and then they act based on how they believe that system works, even if it doesn't work that way. And more often than not, it doesn't. So now we have an elite ruling class who have created an economy in which the stock market is decoupled from the bricks and mortar market. They've created an economy. Let me go one further. Let's talk about politics for a minute. People are like, oh, the Democrats are going to get wiped out. Oh, they're really going to get wiped out. Let me ask you this. Doesn't it seem odd to you that there was a period of time when the two parties really seemed concerned whether they lost or not, where they'd be like, oh, no, we better look at our numbers. Our numbers are going down. We need to do something to bring our numbers. Oh, it's the midterms. Excuse me. The midterms. We got to act before the midterms. All this kind of stuff. There was some level of concern. During the Biden administration, have you noticed there's no concern amongst the Democrats? It is obvious that they're going to be wiped out in a historical manner. And they don't seem to be doing anything um, policy wise to mitigate that. Nothing. Joe Biden made a bunch of promises. He hasn't kept one of them, and he doesn't even care. He'll every now and then do a head fake. Yes, build back better, better builder backer or something, and something like that. We're gonna work on that soon. We're gonna pass the voting rights bill. Yeah, we're gonna do something like that. Now back to Putin. Oh, by the way, 812 billion or 813 billion. That's what they're asking now for the war budget. They don't care. They're feathering their nest. They're going to get plenty of it. Don't you think it's interesting and at least remarkable that we have a party in office now who is going to get wiped out in the midterms and they don't seem to even flinch? They don't care. Why is that? Because we've gotten to a point where it doesn't matter anymore. The elite ruling class, the last thing they did, one of the things they did, they were like, we're going to pass a bill to in the House to what was it? Stop bringing Russian oil, which immediately like made the price of gas go up by 75 cents or a dollar almost, right? We're going to stop doing that. Well, you'd think, well, man, there's going to be a political price to pay. It was like 420 something to 8 or something. That was the final. Both parties, they all voted for it. So what do the Democrats care? And here's the bottom line. To think that one of the parties would be concerned about losing into November, you have to believe that there's two parties in order to think that one of the parties are concerned. But the oligarchs, the elite ruling class, have so captured the political system that either way, it doesn't matter to them. And look, there's some social issues like voting rights or abortion or something that the littles care about. The people the nobodies, that stuff means nothing to them. They'll be like, yes, I'm fighting with my party to stop abortion. They're rich. They're going to take their girlfriends. If they got to, they'll take her to another state. They'll ship her to another country. They'll call a doctor in that'll do it. They're rich. They don't care about abortion. They don't care about these so-called divisive issues. So it doesn't matter to them what happens in November. Here's what I'm going to tell you in November. After the midterm election, the same damn rich people that are in charge right now and are making decisions will be in charge and they'll be making the decisions. Maybe they'll do some COVID investigations from Fauci. Maybe they'll investigate Hunter Biden's laptop or something like that. Ain't much going to happen to him. You know that Epstein, if worse comes to worse, Hunter Biden will get Epstein. He'll do too much crack one day and you'll never hear from him again. But they don't care about that. These people are sacrificial lambs to him also. So now we're in a situation where the elite ruling class aren't even trying to fake it anymore. They're not even trying to fake like they're really concerned about what's happening in the midterms, because they're not. Because if it's Ted Cruz, if it's Ted Bundy, if it's a teddy bear, they don't care. Bear Bryant, Yogi Berra, doesn't matter. It's all a fraud. Who gets to be the public relations party for the oligarchs after November? Nothing else. And you know what they say to them? Whatever your little cultural issues are you want to play with, have at it, as long as we get what we want. And their decisions now are about to create such pain, create such disaster for the working class. Again, I think they have underestimated the pushback. I expect that in Europe, there's people already getting jumpy, and Joe Biden goes to Europe and says, yes, I'm not only sanctioning the Russians, I'm sanctioning the EU and I'm sanctioning the US. There's going to be food problems. Let me tell you something about history. When there is a shortage of bread, governments get overthrown. What was the French Revolution about? When there ain't no bread, somebody loses their head. That's what I gotta say. So now, over the course of the summer, when they start looking around for a nice brioche bun, and you know they love their French bread. It's hard. A baguette. Oh, a baguette. Sorry, there ain't no baguettes. And if you want one, it's going to be $35 for a baguette. Maybe you can have some rice soup. That's good. Maybe you can put some rice. You can, of course, you'll be a little short on electricity. We got rolling blackouts because we're short of power. So here's what we're going to do. You need a rain barrel or melt some snow. And then you can get some water that way. And then you can, if you got a couple grains of rice, you can boil that for a while and have some rice soup. Yummy. Sorry, not enough money for spices, but that's okay. You'll figure a way. When that happens, remember, when there's a shortage of bread, somebody's going to lose their head. And that's what, and that's the arrogance of the elites. That look, what happened in the French Revolution. When you're short on food, things get real unstable. People get pissed, man. You ever get around somebody who's really hungry and they don't have any way of getting food? You want to find an irritable person. They'll punch you right in the face. How's it going, dude? Man, I'm starving. Oh, yeah, well, tell me, how's your sister been? If you don't get away from me, I'm going to punch you right in the face. The only thing I can think about is food. When people start thinking about food, buddy, they're sharpening up the old guillotine. So the thing that the elites haven't taken into account is that people are going to be hungry, particularly, look. I suspect the U.S. produces a lot of food. We got all kinds of stuff. We got dairy farms. We got apple orchards. We got, we grow wheat and grain. We grow so much corn, we don't know what to do with it. We got to turn it into alcohol and burn it in our cars, right? So the U.S. has a lot of room. We can make stuff. We actually can grow stuff. I think and we create our own energy. So the truth of the matter is they're hanging the EU out to dry. And let me add this. What about Russia? Russia creates its own energy. They got a lot of room. They can grow their own food. They're going to be all right. And Russia is in a block with India and China. Their block is going to be fine. China makes stuff. India makes stuff. They will be able to create between that block to make their own food, grow their own bread, cook their own bread, and to and they'll be able to survive energy, food, and make stuff. They'll be okay. They can make it. Go through hard times. The U.S. we can go through hard times, but I don't suspect we'll run out of food. It'll be high, it'll be expensive, but there'll be some food to eat. The EU times are gonna be spectacularly bad, and I wouldn't want to be the people who made the decisions that put them there. That ruling elite class, if I were them, I'd be looking for an island to move to. I'd be looking for a get away the hell out of Europe because they're going to have problems in Europe. They're going to have big problems. At any rate, thanks a lot. Let me look and see what people have to say. Parasocialite says, you'll own nothing and be happy and read my Washington Post and agree with it always. How about this? E. Walker says, economist Ian Pye pointed out how the derivatives of the 2008 crisis are still in the book. Fall of the U.S. dollar will bring them forward. Yep. How about this? E. Walker, the U.S. had to create a list of Russian imports that are not on the sanctions list. The U.S. cannot do without them. Now Russia knows the weakness. Sure. Christopher Suit says, I think they want to false flag with biochemical weapon like they did Syria. They're kind of redundant with their projection false flag. Now, that's where I disagree with you. I think that's for internal stuff. There may be a small group of people that want to do it. Think about this, Chris. Yeah, they wanted to do that in Syria. Look, let me put it to you like this. And I think this is important. If you haven't heard me say it before, you might have. This is on the issue of whether the U.S. wants to get involved in a kinetic war with Russia. Not that it couldn't happen. It could happen. They could stumble into it. But I don't think the generals don't want to. Why is that? You might have heard me say this. Bear with me if you had. In the broad context, Russia is the second most powerful military in the world. But Russia's military is not created to project itself all over the world. In a localized context, on its own border in Europe, Russia is by far the most powerful military there. And they have weapons such as mainly the hypersonic missiles to which the United States and NATO has no defense. If we got 12 aircraft carriers in the area, they can fire 12 missiles and we got none. See what I mean? In conventional warfare, they have a lot of power. So the likelihood is, in the theater of battle, if the US and NATO were to go toe to toe, based on what I've heard from different people, including Scott Ritter, you can look him up. If the US were to get involved with the kinetic war on the Russian border, they would be comprehensively defeated. The Russian military is too powerful in that part of the world. That foolishness that they're feeding you about Russia's losing to Ukraine is silliness. It's preposterous. But so if the US military felt that they could elbow the Russians, they'd have done it by now. Look what they did with Libya. Look what they did with Yugoslavia, Serbia. Look what they've done with the countries that they have a military dominance with. They don't hesitate to use it. They ain't using it now because the Russians have military dominance. They don't want to get in a fight they're going to lose. So no, there may be some neocons that are crazy enough to want it, but the people in charge of running the Pentagon are like, hell no, we're not going to get into a fight with people and maybe possibly likely even get smashed and get crushed. And then again, as I said, think about the ruling elites. They don't want a nuclear war. They don't want to lose their stuff. And Joe Biden keeps saying, no, 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 we ain't going to war with Russia. Jens Stoltenberg keeps saying, oh, no, 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 we ain't sending troops. Poland, no, we're not sending planes. No, we're not doing a no-fly zone, which they couldn't do a no-fly zone, but we're not trying to do a no-fly zone. You're not sending troops. No, we are not engaging with Russia. I ain't saying it couldn't happen. I'm saying the likelihood of that is very, very low because they know that that could go real bad. And the Russians have already made it clear. If you guys engage with us, we're going to react violently. We got a war going on in Ukraine, and anybody who tries to fight us, they're going to considered combatants. We're here, our back is against the wall, and we're ready to fight. And anybody that comes throwing punches, we're throwing punches back. That's where Russia is. And I don't think the US and NATO really want a part of that. So I don't think they're going to try to sneak in there and get a bloody nose and possibly end up where the billionaires lose everything, including their lives. They don't want that. So you may be right, but I don't think they want to do that. And as far as somebody says, first to get a no-fly zone wins, the bottom line is this. How would you do a no-fly zone? What do you have to do to do a no-fly zone? You have to suppress the enemy's air defense, first of all, and then you have to have air superiority. You have to have air defense systems set up in the area, and then you have to protect your air defense system. So what would the U.S. have to do? It would have to set up a bunch of THAAD and Patriot missile batteries around Russia for anti-aircraft stuff around the Ukrainian area, and it would have to suppress the ones that the Russians have. So some that are inside the Russian border. So it would have to attack inside the Russian border. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, as soon as the U.S. starts setting up these things, it says to the Russia, we're going to set up anti-aircraft batteries, and we're going to use those to control the airspace. Those anti-aircraft batteries, they said, are going to get turned to rubble. They're going to get hit with missiles. You've seen how that happens. The Russian missile strikes are not to be trifled with. Russians going to send a volley of missiles in, just like they did the NATO base in Lviv, and they're going to turn that crap into rubble. So how are you going to create a new no-fly zone? Is if as soon as you set up your missile batteries, Russia strikes them with missiles and turns them to rubble. And now you've attempted to do that, and now Russia has immediately turned all of your crap to rubble. Now, do you go to war with Russia there? You're never going to get, we're going to send planes. And Russia's got S-400s. They're shooting every one of those planes down. Every one of those planes. You send a plane into the theater, U.S. NATO planes fly into Ukraine. Russia shoots every one of them down as soon as they get in the airspace because Russia controls the airspace. You want to do that? Again, we're not talking about Iran. Excuse me, Iran's pretty powerful. We're not talking about Afghanistan. We're talking about a technologically advanced, powerful nation that has an integrated air defense, the likes of which the United States military has not gone up against. You don't want to fly in there with planes. They're shooting you down. This is an integrated air defense with anti-aircraft batteries for long range that can shoot you from 150 miles away, that can shoot you down, that have close ones up, that can shoot you and shoot your missiles down and all that. They got an integrated air defense. No, the U.S. is not going in there. This is not yet. No. No, 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 no. And if they fire Kinzhal missiles at Kinzhal, their hypersonic missiles, if they fire those at your air defense systems can't shoot them down. You have no defense for them. So, no, that ain't enough. The truth is, physically, they're like, let's do an air. Do you know what that's like? That's like me standing in front of the door and Mike Tyson walks up and says, I want to go through the door, and I cross my hands. Mike Tyson, you ain't crossing through this door. I am until he punches me in the nose. I can stop him until he starts swinging. As soon as he hits me in the nose, I'm going to the next world. Wham! Where's Garland? I saw him flying across the room 5 minutes ago. Haven't heard from him since. I think he's dead. Mike Tyson punched him right in the snoot. That's what we're looking at. So, and a skeptical jerk makes a point. We lost in Afghanistan a bunch of guys in Toyota friggin' pickup trucks. And don't get me wrong, a 2004 Tacoma is a very reliable truck. But that being said, you're not supposed to lose to a bunch of guys in the 2004 Tacomas. And they were like 4 cylinders. They weren't even the 6-cylinder ones. And some of them were 2-wheel drive. You're losing to guys that don't even have 4-wheel drives. And you want to go to war with Russia? Probably not a good idea. And our Pentagon knows that. So all the talk of chemical weapons, I think that's a bit of a distraction for this reason. I think the distraction there is this. The Russians have found apparently some chemical weapons labs, and I don't think that's going to turn out well for the U.S. I think there's a lot of dirt there. I think there's a lot of stuff that they wouldn't want to go out. And there's a term, deny, project, attack. It's like, and I've seen shows like this, and you see it in reality where there's some guy who preaches about how much he hates gay people. They're the worst, they're terrible. And then they like find him trying to grab somebody in an airport. Be wary of somebody that hates gays too much. They're probably got some inclinations in that direction. And it's deny, project, attack. People that hate gay people, a lot of times they probably have some gay, tendencies. I don't care. That's their life. I don't care if people live their life. I'm just saying, I'll put it like this. I got nothing against gay people. I don't hate them. I don't talk about them. I don't think about them. They live their lives. I live mine. I really don't care. But somebody that walks around hating them all the time, probably there's some things going on in their mind that they're uncomfortable with, right? So at any rate, I say all that to say this. I think that unless we are very, very unlucky, I don't think, unless there's something happens to stumble, I don't think we're going to get involved in a shooting war with Russia. I think that this is a war of economic attrition to some point. And I think, here's what I think, 2 things. I don't think the US and the EU thought this out. I think they just are firing from the hip. It's like, yeah, let's throw another sanction and another and another. And I think that the Russians and the Chinese, at the very least, and possibly even the Indians, game planned this a little bit. I think they game planned. I think on one side, you got some people who's just throwing anything up against the wall to see if it sticks. And I think you have some other people on the other side who game planned this, and they feel pushed into a corner. They feel attacked. They feel like they don't have any other chance, any other choice. I think China feels like they want to go through Russia to get to us. They want to destroy Russia, and then they want to get to us. And Russia feels like they want to destroy us. Well, those people are backed into a corner. You don't want to fight somebody who's backed into a corner. They're going to fight for all they're worth. And so I think that the economic war of attrition, let me add this, and for all of that people say about Russia, and there's a groundswell against Putin. If you look at the polling, which I have, it's like 71% approval rating for Putin. The people in Russia approve of this operation. So you've got people in Russia who know they're going to take a hit, and they're no problem about it. They're willing to take a hit. They're on board with their government. On the other side, you got people who ain't willing to take a hit. And for those who have been propagandized into being on board with their government, that ain't going to last but so long. At some point, they're going to wake up and say, I don't like this. This is a problem. Garland, any thoughts on the videos of captured Russian soldiers being shot? Sure. Here's what I'll say. As the war goes on, more and more information comes out. I mean, you can bullcrap people, but so long. So what we're finding out is, what we're being told is the Russians are evil and they're losing. They're losing and they're evil, and they're losing because they're evil. And the mighty, valiant, scrappy little Ukrainian army is holding them off. And what we find is that there is a very nasty element in Ukraine, and they are the fascists, and that they are doing very terrible things. And this is what the Russians said. And the evidence is starting to come out. And the other thing's going to happen is there's a lot of refugees, and some of these refugees are going to start talking, and the information will come out. And what's coming out is we're backing some real nasty people. We're backing some really nasty, terrible people who are doing nasty, terrible things, murdering, abusing, and torturing people, and violating language. Now we're seeing Ukrainian soldiers who are arbitrarily shooting and torturing captured POWs. And we're saying that the Russians are involved in war crimes. So the bottom line is, as this goes on, as more information comes out, I think it's going to be more difficult. And I think the concept that continually saying the Russians are losing, 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 oh, they're getting beat by the scrappy little Ukrainians. And at some point, I think Ukraine's going to fold. See, I think the Russians are playing it as we're going to continue about our business and let the information war go as it is. Because I think the Russians, as again, they feel cornered. They feel backed into a corner, and they're going to fight their way out of the corner. But they feel like the information war can be what it is. We're going to take care of business. I think, maybe I'm wrong, I'm guessing. And they're slowly enveloping that country. Look, Ukraine's a huge country. It's bigger than Iraq. It's a big, big country. This is not small. And I think they've got an operation. They got a and they're fluid. They got a time plan, and I think they're going to slowly do what they got to do, get control. What's interesting is that they're not flattening these cities and bombing everything. I think that's interesting because I think their plan is to be able to quickly, and I don't say, that really quickly, but in relative terms, to get people back in, to get the country going back again, to get the world of Ukraine started back on its foot again, so they can get a independent government, somewhat independent. There's going to be a Russian friendly government in there. You can best be sure of that. And then when there's a Russian friendly, think about this too. Ukraine has a lot of resources, a lot of wheat, grows a lot of stuff. It's the breadbasket of Europe, and they've got a lot of other things there, right? They've got a lot of other natural resources. Russia's going to control theirs because they're going to have a Russia-friendly government that they will surely have there. They've made that clear. So, which will give Russia even more control of resources on the international markets. So that's going to give them another hand up. But I think they got a plan, and I think they're just working their plan. And what we're looking at is the U.S. again is winning the info war. But you know what? If you and I get in a fight, I trained for martial arts. If you back me into a corner and attack me, I don't care about the info war. I care about coming out of that corner alive. I'm going for the eyes or the throat. I don't want afterwards. You could say Garland poked me in the eyes and kicked me in the groin and hit me in the throat and elbowed me and bit me and scratched me and did anything. Only thing I care about is that I came out of that corner. Afterwards, you can tell anybody as it may. Don't care about my reputation. You push me into the corner. I'm doing everything I can to come out of that corner alive. You can handle the info war as you see fit, but you're going to be hurt. And if I don't make it out of that corner, ain't neither one of us going to be happy. Right? And I think that's where Russia is. They're like, yeah, you can handle info war, but when we get done, one thing's for sure, Ukraine will not be a military base. And can I end up with one thing? But I'm going to end up with one thing. And that is, of course, this started in 2014, and people want to say Trump was better than Trump. Let me tell you something. Trump had a significant part in this. And let me tell you why. One of the things that the Russians have said continually they were concerned with, right, was that Ukraine would be a base and that the U.S. would put intermediate nukes in there, missiles in there, and be able to hit, and some of them may be hypersonic, and then they'd be able to get to Moscow in 5 minutes, and Moscow wouldn't be able to stop a first strike, okay? The U.S. would have first strike dominance. Okay. When what's the impetus for that? In 2018, the Trump administration abandoned the Intermediate Nuclear Treaty. At that point, I believe that's when it got real for Russia. Because as long as that Intermediate Nuclear Treaty was there, Russia was like, well, we've got a treaty, so you're not going to it would be a violation for you to obviously put nukes into Ukraine, so you can't do it. So Trumpy abandoned that treaty, and now Russia's like, oh, now it's real. Now you want to put nukes in Ukraine. And then just before Russia invaded, Vladimir Zelensky says, I want nukes in Ukraine. And Russia said, that's it, we're kicking your ass. And so don't let Trump off the hook. All these, a banning of these nuclear treaties was a significant part of that. You got to give Trump some of the responsibility for this. Now, I'm not saying Trump, because it was John Bolton who, was abandoning all the nuclear treaties with the intent. Oh, you best believe they had an intent eventually of exactly what Russia's saying. They intended to at some point put nuclear missiles in Ukraine to threaten Russia with. Yes, they did. But and this was John Bolton, it wasn't Trump. However, Trump chose Bolton, so he's responsible. He chose Bolton. Why? Because Bolton was the guy from what's the guy that died? Israeli guy. I mean, the guy that owned all of the he owned all the casinos, and he was heavily involved, and he's one of Bolton's backers. But at any rate, you know who I'm talking about. But at any rate, Sheldon Adelson. So Bolton was Sheldon Adelson's guy. So Trump was tight, getting money from Adelson for his campaign, etc. So when Adelson said go with Bolton, he went with Bolton. Trump should have never went with Bolton, so he did. Bolton liquidated all of these treaties, and that was a big part of how we got here. So Trump's responsible for that. So the idea that Trump bears no responsibility is false. And what's interesting about this, and here's a guy that I really don't care for much, is Barack Obama, for any number of reasons. Yep, Adelson. But here's the thing about Obama. One thing about Obama, this is interesting. He was dead set against sending arms to Ukraine. Obama felt, and he said it, Obama said, Ukraine is very, very important to Russia, but not so much to us. So I'm not sending them a bunch of weapons. I'm not going to weaponize them. So the interesting thing was, the guy who wouldn't have gotten us here is Barack Obama, because he wouldn't have weaponized Ukraine. Now, the government of Ukraine was overthrown under Obama, but that's a whole nother story. But the bottom line is, that's a fight he didn't want. He did not want to fight a war with the Russians. He thought it was too dangerous, and he didn't want to arm Ukraine because he thought it was too dangerous. Isn't that interesting? The one guy that wanted to do that. And like I said, I'm no Obama fan, but that's just a reality. It is what it is. I'm about real, giving you the truth and who did what, and do with it what you may. Okay, so thanks a lot. Look, what we got? Good question. I wonder where that pint-sized bullcrap artist is holed up. Oh God, yeah. He's bad news. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. At Garland Nixon on Twitter, garlandn@gmail.com. And don't forget, if you're watching this on Twitter, make sure you go to my YouTube page and like, subscribe. I need more people to subscribe. So like, share, and subscribe. Share this on all your social media platforms. And I do have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Garland Nixon. So I would appreciate anybody. I think I got one person with $1 or something, but I'd like to build a studio. I'm going to get my thing up and going this week so I can monetize. I've got enough views and all that. I'm going to monetize my YouTube before they toss me, right? I'm also on Odyssey. If I disappear from here, I'm on Odyssey. If one day you wake up to watch me and you can't find me, go to Odyssey, ODYSEE, because I do have an account there. And patreon.com/Garland Nixon. I would appreciate anyone who, if you can do a $5, $10, $20 a month to, I want to build a really nice studio here and, really kind of get this channel going and turn it into like a legitimate news channel. That's my plan, get a website up and all that. So we would appreciate it if you'd help. Patreon.com/Garland Nixon. And Saturday mornings, I have great guests. I've had Ray McGovern, Dan Lazar, Regis Trimley, Dr. Gerald Horn. I mean, a lot of great people. Caleb Maupin. And next Saturday, hopefully, I will, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, as they say, I'll have some more great guests. Thanks a lot. Like, share, subscribe. Peace. I'm out. Oh, Rumble, please. Yes, I got to get on Rumble. Thanks a lot. Skeptical Jerk. Thanks a lot. Old Skept says, good show again. I do the best I can. Let's see. Great talk. Appreciate the stream. Thanks a lot. I try to get, oh, yeah, Rockfin. That's another good one. I try to get on as much as I can now. I enjoy it. There's a lot going on. I think it's important to get on and talk with my friends. Wow. We're getting up over 100 people. We are getting up over 100 people per show now. That's like, quite a, as soon as I said that, I dropped to 98. But that's quite an accomplishment. And I appreciate everybody. Peace. I'm out.